And welcome back, bookworms, to episode 2 of the Ravensridge monthly book TTRPG Book Club. That's a mouthful. Maybe we should have like an acronym or something for it, Nick, you think?
RPG.
Just
Oh, wait, you mean
RPG?
the whole thing?
The whole
Just
thing, like
RPG.
just RPG Book Club? Yeah, Ravensridge
Ravensridge
RPG
Book
Book
Club.
Club. Yeah, yeah. I love it. Okay, we'll try and stick to that for the next one if I can remember. Maybe I'll write it down somewhere. Welcome back, bookworms. We're reading Shadow of Esteren today. Well, reviewing Shadow of Esteren. So, as always, we are talking about it from someone who has read the book. So, if you haven't read the book, some of this might not make a lot of sense. But if it is something that you have read, grab some popcorn, grab a snack, grab a drink. My name is Dylan, representative and co-founder of Indiverse.io, the only indie tabletop marketplace in the world, as far as we know. And I have to be the lovely Nicholas Rabinia. How you doing today, Nick?
I am doing great, and I'm so keen to talk RPGs, as
Yeah?
always.
Awesome. Oh, sorry, I forgot to introduce what Nick does. Nick is obviously one of the fantabulous designers that comes from us from the Ravensridge Emporium. One of the primary designer for Caught in the Rain, which I have started to actually read this week because, we're taking it to Tabletop, which we won't talk about today, but I've wanted to get to be an expert to it.
With it?
Right, sorry, at Port Play. Right, that's the Melbourne one. Yes, so you guys will be at Tabletop. Yep. We'll start with some of the easy high notes. So, Shadow of Esteren. Give me your high-level thoughts between, like, the setting, how you think it'll play at the table, just your cliff notes.
Love this. Yeah, high-level thoughts. Wow, okay. Setting-wise, I think it's an incredibly rich setting. I don't know if it's necessarily presented in a way that is as accessible as it could be. And then when it comes to the actual systems, I feel like it does a lot of really interesting things that seem to be aligned to what I think are the design goals, like a more of a streamlined mid sort of level crunch kind of game that is kind of like simulationist and traditional. But it sort of overall, I think, maybe falls on its feet or falls over itself a few times here or there. And that could simply be maybe like issues with translation potentially. But I think there might be a few like areas that are maybe structurally not sound. Those are my high level thoughts.
Okay.
Yeah. What about you? What are your high level thoughts on it?
I think much the same. It sets itself really clear in how it's trying to bring its identity in the 175 pages of like lore, backstory, and world building that it does, which is it's kind of like a mix between like you hearing it as a story and also being given the information as like as a game master as well. So there's like letters in it that sort of are between characters of note or people of note through like the different times that the book is represented in. It shows you the different cultures and how they've developed, so you get like a lot of rich backstory and how like the tension between the cultures, the 3 to 4 cultures that are like humanity. It has a really deep and interesting look at like the antagonists of the setting, the Fiondas or Fiondas. I wasn't quite sure how to pronounce it, but they are like weird, non-standard humanoid most of the time creatures that don't have like a standard base structure like humans of like, having like 2 eyes or like a face, like a structure of how they work. So they give you like such a rich, deep look at how the world works. And then I agree with you in that the mechanics of the game, it's a very simple system. It is D10 plus like whatever you're rolling, which is always on the nice and accessible on the character sheet. But they call themselves light. I don't think I would call it that. I'm getting very deep into it a little bit, but these
I
are the
would
things I
agree
want
with
to touch on. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the identity piece, that from the narrative to mechanics, I feel like there's a little bit that just doesn't quite sync up for me. And it is Tolkien-like in how it is written. It is very heavily wordy, which can be good, but it also can be really difficult when it comes to making it a reference book for a return or experienced player. I think initially every TTRPG person who puts together a book like this, or any book really, they are using it as a teaching tool. But I think you've raised it last time we were speaking. They're not just that. They're also a reference book. And having those things that make referencing super easy are way more noticeable. And thank you for pointing that out, because it has made me take a whole other perspective at looking at these kind of games. Like every game that I've looked at now, I go back and look, I'm like, is this good at referencing?
We did talk about it for sure. We did mention it. I think I even talked a little bit about how I did the layout design for Caught in the Rain.
Yep.
in terms of that as well. So yeah,
That's
looking
right.
forward to that. That'll be I have a lot to say about that as always. I'm
Yeah,
sure you
yeah.
do too.
Let's talk about some of the big things. Like when I
Mm,
look at these things, I try and look at like the big things that I'm like, I love this. This could use some work. I want to start
okay.
with the thing I loved the most about the system. And I hope you'll let me take the
Okay.
reins on this one because it's something that I
Take it.
feel I've seen in a couple of games done well, and like it's almost like a combination of two games that I thought have done so well, except for like it still doesn't quite fit the bill. So combat in this game is
Mm,
initiative is predefined. It's based on speed, no dice rolls. Bam. That every turn, every time combat is going to be order is going to be set in stone. Uh, at least for the first turn. And then rather than uh, being so like into the numbers, the figures, like you can only do 30 feet, you've got 6 squares. I think it encourages theater of the mind in that the aspect of which is like, oh, you can move like up to about 10 feet, but if you're wanting to make like big movements, then there is an attitude that you take. And this is one of those things that's what really made it stand out is the attitude of your combatant in each round of combat. So you have 5 attitudes: aggressive, defensive, neutral, uh, one's missing, drawing a blank, and the last one is movement. And that allows you to, well, it forces you to adjust how your modifier, so like potential, which is like a universal modifier that you're adding or taking away from your roles based on what you're trying to do and how you're trying to do it. So how they represent that by you every round picking, okay, this is how I want to act in this round of combat, gives you that really dynamic shifting battlefield of how you're feeling about the combat and how you feel like you should be reacting to what's happening there. So, if you've got like, oh, it's 5 of us versus 2 enemies, and then like 3 more come barreling through a wall like the Kool-Aid Man, like there's so much that you can change to either like help protect your friends to assess the new threat or move yourself to get into a position so that you can, manage the battlefield a lot better. Like that flexibility is just amazing. Like it feels, lives, and breathes with like the state in which a character would be in, as well as the person at the table trying to strategize around the mechanics of combat would want to like adjust based on like, do I need to help my friend more? Is that person being like, do they need to help take down one person so we can focus somewhere else? Like, I love that the amount of table talk that would bring to the table.
yeah, I the fighting attitudes is what stood out to me as well
Mm,
because when I remember like reading through like just the conflict rules and thinking like, huh, they haven't mentioned anything about like positioning. Like there's no grids, there's no like areas or
yep,
zones or something that you often see in other games.
yep.
And then yeah, just taking another look at the fighting attitudes and then seeing, you're picking one every sort of like round or whatever. That's really where all of that tactical decision making was sort of abstracted to. And I actually really liked it. I
Mm,
think it could possibly benefit from having zones just to help visualize the general positioning. Like not positioning of like where people are, but like take the movement, for instance,
mm.
like you might have a friend or an enemy up on a balcony and you're down here, right? So just being able to like, I guess that's sort of, it's almost like that's just happening, right? It's implied that there are
Mm.
zones. Um, yeah, but the fighting attitudes I really, really liked. Uh, how did you feel about like one thing that I wasn't certain about, I suppose, is how you're actually meant to help each other in a combat. Like when you look at the group combat rules, it seemed to imply that, generally you're just going to handle conflict where there's multiple parties involved as like individual sort of duels, right? And then when one ends, they could possibly like I guess join another one. But how could an ally potentially like leave their current duel and then get over to it and assist an ally? So there's a whole leaving the fight sort of mechanisms, but that sort of involves some sort of like chasing aspect of it that would take time before you can then enter another conflict. I,
Mm.
I wasn't sure. What is the flow there? How does it actually work?
Dude, I think, like you say, it doesn't really present itself that well in like mechanically how it folds out. Because from how it's described, it almost looks like, okay, we've got this duel because this person is the fastest, and then that the first person acts, the second person acts, and then that shuffles along. But then you've got this like scuffle of 4 people, 2v2. It's like, how does that sort of shuffle into like the normal combat rotation? Like that wasn't super clear. So I think
Yeah,
that would take a little bit of home
that's
ruling to get
my
around
point.
that.
Like
Mm.
I feel like it overall, like I quite like the combat system. Like it manages like to bring all of these things together
Mm.
in a really like narrative kind of focused combat, but
Yeah.
still includes some like tactical elements.
Mm.
But it just doesn't quite explain in certain situations how it actually works.
Mm.
Like the leave in the combat section in the conflict rules, right?
Mm.
Yes, it uses the movement attitude, but I don't know if you saw, you have to make a whole bunch of rolls about leaving it to sort
Yeah.
of, I guess, avoid, like, see if you actually can get away,
Mm.
right? But like, it's just, sure, you can enter another one, becomes 2v1 or whatever it is, right? But then to me, it feels like there's a lot of tracking happening there,
Mm.
right?
That.
Like, I would
Oh
not
yeah.
want to run a game like a conflict of this where that was a potential. I'd rather just
Yeah.
have the conflict be like very few amount of people, possibly even just like duels. It's like there are two combatants because it seems like though there's a lot of really interesting aspects here with the fighting attitudes, I don't think there's enough overall structure to really help manage a more complicated conflict.
Mm.
What do you
Mm.
think of
Maybe it's kind of the point of the system. Like we don't think of
that?
like all these RPGs as always being like the hero games, like with D&D, where you can fight five people as a barbarian and come out barely scathed and like ready to tear up another 8 to 10 people. Like this does feel more like a system where like combat and like getting hurt is a punishment. So like focusing in on like
Mm,
that blow to blow of like a dueling sort of system, even though like obviously you are involved in a combat all around you. So I think that's probably the intent of this thing. And like they talk about like the punishments for combat, like the consequences of like getting stabbed, getting hit, getting reaching agony, and then like and hopefully not, but eventually dying. Like I think it tried to pillar that like second to second of
yeah.
you being locked in with one person at a time, which I guess that's sort of what they tried to pillar. But I agree, like if you're trying to do
Mm,
anything more than that as characters develop, and then maybe that becomes like this sort of system becomes too easy to manage, or you want to have people like supporting and helping each other, like you said before. I think breaking away from the dual side of things would definitely be something I would prefer to do. And like this is that piece I sort of talked about, which will I think I really want to have like a bigger piece talk about, like
oh
the
yeah.
how it presents itself versus like the identity it tries to give itself versus how it performs that mechanically is really, I think, really shines through in just what you've noted there. And I didn't even really flag like the oh, it's like two people fighting, and then like well, what is it like? Are they in like an echo chamber, sort of like fighting each other, and then like things pull in? I didn't really even think of it like that, but I really see what you mean now, and it's yeah, hmm,
Yeah, I
interesting one to
think
topple.
I really like it is because like it definitely seems like what you say. They're trying to go for this certain type of vibe. You know,
Hmm,
it's conflict is high stakes, it's dangerous, and you'll probably be like locked into these duels, right? But we're also like it's also a game, and I think this is just some of the simulationist roots sort of showing through here in that it's trying to really capture maybe what that sort of messy conflict would look like, but it's at the same time like it's doing that, it's capturing that at the expense of like, okay, well, the game master has to, I don't know, figure out a way to actually manage this, right? So I think that there needs to just be something that helps the game master actually facilitate something like that, or just change the whole leaving a combat thing. You know,
hmm.
maybe it's not possible. You know,
I think maybe even don't try and encourage people to do like one-on-ones. Like I think it should be an open environment, and if you're able to like disengaging from like a one-on-one encounter without getting like stabbed or hit because you're turning your back to your opponent, that's a that's a thing I think that should be a part of the system when you're like free flowing through combat and you're not doing 1v1 duels or 1v2 or however they want to break down the dueling system. But I think like that system works really well because it allows you to break away from where you're sort of locked in, like we talked about with dueling. Like that is a straight on until one person can't continue. And being locked in like that can feel isolating. Like even at the table, I can imagine just like if you're not a strong combative person, or like the person you're versing or you've picked to challenge is like so out of your league, or like how do you do bosses? Like how do you do boss creatures, people, with like henchmen? If you've got a person that's designed to like take on the party, and then the henchmen are sort of just like, oh, they're there to sort of just like take some of the hits. Like how does one person take that on? Like it's designed to be a party encounter. Like that sort of doesn't get resolved well by having that. So I think yeah, it would fall flat really quickly. So honestly, like leaving combat, I think should just be a single roll to say yes, I don't get hit by the attack that's coming for the person who's trying to take advantage of me turning my back or like backing away. But group combat, one-on-one combat, I yeah, not really a fan. Like I think if only because I rewatched it again recently. The among Honor Among Thieves, the newest D&D movie, um,
Oh yeah.
and even stuff like I recently watched the second season of One Piece, and like the way that the fights are presented to that space are like it is like people like leaning over a table and like hitting the person that their ally is like struggling with. Like there's like things that like show that like there is natural support that comes from just like being in the same environment and fighting with people that you're used to fighting with, understanding how they like best to do combat and where they struggle. And I think that this really like discourages that like teamwork aspect. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
mm,
So I'm thinking like instead of this, like, because at by the rules as written, it seems like you have to leave your combat with the movement attitude and then later join another combat. So it's now 2v1 or whatever it is to help your ally.
yeah,
And then that person you were fighting, I guess, shifts target and then enters that fray and then it splits into 1v1 again. So like it's like, okay, well, do you now have to leave again and come back in?
yeah,
Like it's just not working. And I'm thinking like, yeah, maybe having another kind of attitude that is like more supportive where you can like, you're in the same zone, if you will,
mm,
and you can like, you can lean over the table and like, slash at that person, but you're leaving yourself exposed for the person that you're currently in a fight with. I think would have been a cleaner way to maybe incorporate those kinds of elements
for sure, yeah.
without adding this like confusing aspect. I'm still not really sure how it's actually meant to flow. I don't think the rules are very good at actually conveying
Mm,
that.
mm.
But
Uh,
with that said, I
yeah.
really like the fighting attitudes. I think they're a really cool substitution for like a map or like zones or something like that to bring in that like tactical aspect of it. And
Yeah,
I
the
think
ability.
I think that was a really good shout from you. Sorry.
Yeah, no, no, I was gonna say just the ability to make decisions that aren't just like, oh, what am I going to attack? Who am I going to attack? But how I'm going to act in this round. That's exceptional. So that's me. Combat, loved it in
Mm.
99% of how it's presented. What about you? What's the big thing? What do you love about what Shadow of Esteren brought to the table?
All right. I don't know. This might be a bit controversial. I think it's a
Ooh,
relatively unexplored
ooh,
area of role-playing games still.
okay, okay.
It's something I've been playing around with a lot myself, actually, for a few years. But I really enjoyed the way they had these test rolls. So it's not like a traditional like skill check or attribute check or anything.
Mm,
It's more like a save that you might find in those kind of traditional games, like a dexterity save or something from fifth edition, right? But it's about your characters' like beliefs and their ideals, right? So in Shadows of Esteren, right, you're essentially assigning. You don't have attributes. You have what they call ways, which are kind of like attributes,
mm.
and then skills, right? But the ways they also do double duty, right? They imply something about your character's like attitudes and beliefs generally, right? So if you have a high, I can't remember what the ways are called, like a way of strength or something like that.
So there's
Whatever it's
combativeness,
combative, that's the one.
creativity, empathy, reason, and conviction.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah. So if you have like say a high level of combativeness, you're generally going to be better in a fight, right? But the system tells you, well, that also tells you a little bit about who your character is. Like they might be a bit more quick to anger or just like more focused on decision making in the moment without much more thought, like those kinds of things. And it's not like it's not in a way where like you're like pigeonholed to act in a certain way. You're encouraged to actually define, well, what does it mean for you to have high combativeness? That
Mm,
could be quick to make decisions, or it could be I'm quick to anger. It doesn't have to be both, for instance, right? Where the tests come into this, and what I love so much is that, and I wish the system actually gave more room for this, right? Is that the game master can effectively, oh, I forget what they call them in this, but effectively the game master, right, the GM, they can have you make a save against one of your ways to sort of like, I guess, like act in alignment with like your ideals or your beliefs based on those ways, and
mm.
you're trying to get low on that, right? So if you have high combativeness, so you're maybe you're quick to anger, right? That's how you've contextualized that for your character, and you're in a situation that's like high tension here. and you know everyone at the table knows that you're a bit of a hothead, right? So the
Yeah.
game master might say, okay, you need to make a save here, a test for your combativeness, and if you don't roll low enough, if you don't roll above your score effectively in combativeness, then you're going to have to act in alignment to what you've defined for your character here, which could be actually starting one of those fights, and we know how lethal that can be, right? I
Yeah.
love that. I loved it so much. What do you think about it?
I'm mixed, and I really like how they have presented it in this game, more so than I think I've ever seen in any other game. And for the exact reason that you've pointed out, it doesn't. So to bash more on D&D, as we will do for probably every episode ever.
Yes, I always
I
will.
hate. Sorry, strong dislike for the alignment system. I
Yep.
think that it has too many. It's too broad, and players at the table can get too stuck into, oh, are you really being like lawful good? Um, and I think that it is hurtful to, I think, having agency as a player for your character to develop. I think
Agreed.
that especially getting stuck into like, oh, is that really a good action? Oh no, well, let's just we'll take the paladin away because he's not allowed to see us break into the building. That's not okay. He'll the bad things will happen. Here it gives you that flexibility. So like what, like you said, how does that present itself? So you get that agency back while still having like mechanical and game impacting consequences for being, too headstrong or too influential. Like having influence high means that you have a high degree of empathy. So then rather than running from a thing that's about to, like, I don't know, a bunch of creatures are coming to like burn their way through a small town, if you have high influence and you've spent your time like taking like earning money in that town, earning jobs and whatnot, and then they're all about to get slaughtered by monsters, like you're gonna turn back. Like that's a
Yeah.
real, it's like a moral and ethical, or like a nature versus like logic role. Like it shows that internal conflict, not just like, well, character would be like, let's get the hell out of here. It's like, well, you have morals, like you gotta hold you to those. Like if they, like, all, like every good thing has its like negative counterpoint. And I really like that. It brings depth to characters that, so I think it encourages people who don't always bring that to their character. They sort of just like put a shell on it, like level one, and then sort of it just devolves into them playing themselves. This sort of like breaks away
Which is
from that.
totally valid.
Yeah, yeah, like that's totally fine. Like, and how you present here just means that you might find something that you're comfortable with. So it might start breaking that mold down. So you bring a bit more of like the character to other games that you play. I think encouraging that without it being like hard and fast is like you always have to do this, and leaving it up to the game master, game leader. They call them the game leader
That's right.
in
Game
this
leader. Yeah. The
um
GL.
the GL. Yeah, good luck everybody. Bringing that to the table is like, it's not going to be every time. Like, but when it is like high
Yeah.
tension, whether you've like just failed a roll or like you've succeeded a lot, like it's sort of like it really adds that like, oh, when's it coming up? Like it's a tension point as well that the
That's
GM can
right.
use, which I
Exactly.
really appreciate. Really appreciate. Um, I think that
But on the
I
flip side,
yeah,
right? You said
yeah.
you felt mixed, right? So like what's the flip side to this?
The flip, I think, is the same problem I have with like the alignment chart, is that some players and even like some game masters might, like, if you write a little blurb on like how like each of the ways or the faults that are the opposite of them are presented in your character, I think it can really make it difficult to make changes in the way that your character feels about encounter, like the experiences they've had. I think that really
Hmm.
hurts development, like character development.
Change, right?
Yeah, yeah, I think encouraging that, and like the way that you act and like the way that you present yourself at like level one of like any game, compared to like, when you get to like level five, level 10, like halfway through the leveling process, all the way to the end of that leveling process, I struggle to believe that that person is not going to be changed in any way. It predefines how you, what you bring to the table. Like there is no like, there's no middle ground. There's no
Nuance.
like,
So,
oh, I can be a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Like it really takes identity away from the player, which I hate. Bring yourself to the table. Bring someone entirely opposite to you to the table. I'm enjoying that recently with games I'm playing. I don't get to
mm,
play a high mental stat character. I'm playing a brawler. I'm like, and I don't do that ever. And I'm loving it. Like, it's great to break type. So I like to encourage that, and I think it does well at doing that in this game. Um, yeah, I really enjoyed it for this, even though it's something that I'm really contentious about usually.
Yeah, and that's why I said it. Like it's contentious because I think people, look, I think some people are a bit precious about their characters and maybe should take a bit of a step back, right?
Sure, yeah,
From that, it's still a game
it
in the
is.
end, and I like that it was such a simple rule
Mm,
that I think adds a lot, particularly on that tension that you're talking about, right? Like we're playing these characters, and here's this small little thing, like this little lever you can pull to just be like, well, what's your character going to do in this moment that is one, it's an impactful moment and it's directly tied to something you've defined about your character. Are they going to are they going to sacrifice themselves to some degree, whatever that sacrifice is,
mm,
to hold up those beliefs, or are they not going to do that? And sure, you just have like this dice roll and it's, obviously leaning towards one particular way in that you will sort of generally, in most cases, act in alignment to that. I think there's a lot of creativity that can happen in that space though, right? Like it doesn't
mm.
have to be super one dimensional, like in that instance with the town you're talking about. You know, that doesn't mean they're going to charge head like straight into like the invading force or whatever and
Oh
get in the
yeah.
way and protect everyone.
Mm,
Maybe they'll interpret that as like, well, that's true, but it was really this one person that I really connected with in this town, and I'm going to make sure that they're safe, right? So
yep.
I still think there's a lot of agency that can come from this, right, in
Mm,
how the player actually interprets it. Um,
true. Okay.
so on top of that, right, um, I wish the system had a little bit more space for this particular aspect because it was my favorite thing about the game actually. And just having that extra space to talk about, well, yeah, your characters do change as they grow and as the experiences that they have. Maybe after every time one of these test rolls happens, because I can't imagine it would happen all of the time, right? It should really only happen on those really impactful moments that
Yep.
have meaning for your character. Maybe after every one of those tests, irrespective of the outcome, maybe you get an opportunity to just redefine what is important for you in terms of that way. Because this is would be a character defining moment,
Yeah.
right? So change it or don't change it. Whatever suits the character and the player, what they feel is right in that sense, based on the experience that they just had. I think probably to me would maybe resolve some of that tension that you might have with this system. What do you think?
Yeah. I hadn't even thought of it like that. Really, honestly, like it's like you've just pulled the curtain back, and like I've seen a bit more potential for it, and I think that's like that comes from like how you and I would run things differently, and like want to, I guess, present that change. And I really like that idea. And even if it's not something that you mechanically like or like in game like, yeah, you have to do this, but like it is the opportunity to reflect and see the impact of the experience that you've had for better or worse. There's something to that development, that growth, like into character growth as well, that I really appreciate from like someone who's like an avid like reader. And like the big thing for me in any piece of medium is like development of people, like people growing and changing to for the betterment of themselves or their own perceived benefit for obviously antagonistic characters. But like there's that growth, and that's something I really appreciate in like being able to bring to a TTRPG. So I feel because I bring it to myself, these systems always feel like a bit hampering, but I think maybe it
Yeah.
is the way in which they presented that this game doesn't have that like restriction that makes me really appreciate what it brings to the table. So that was a really long-winded way of saying that I appreciate what it does, but I think the context of how I see these systems usually with them being so locked down is like this is just such a breath of fresh air to me when I'm so divisive and yeah, contradictory to most
Yeah.
systems that try and do this. So it's exceptional. Absolutely exceptional.
Best
Yeah.
thing about the system, in my opinion. I
Yeah.
loved it. I just
Yeah.
wish there's a little bit more, like I mentioned.
I loved combat, but I think your just the way you've presented these test rolls has maybe made me make a flip. I think that maybe this is my favorite part from the thing that I usually dislike the most about any system. Wow, look at that. We've done growth.
Yeah. Yeah. Huge. You can change what that way means to you now.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
yeah. Oh,
it would be.
what's
Yeah.
another thing that stands out to you with Shadows of Esteren?
Oh my lord, magic, magic. Holy jeez, I loved it. I thought it was such
Yeah.
a. It just gets away from the you have to be proficient in like like these spells are defined. Like I have this named spell that always only does this thing. I want to do this thing and do that thing, and like it's all just I have to do this action, or this affects this many people, or I have to do like fandangle everything around it.
Mm.
Even though there are three really distinct schools of magic, and they operate, two of them are pretty close in some aspects, but one is completely out there. But the way in which you access them, get the resources for them, how they're mechanically important to the game, how they work from like a mechanical, one's more like your direct arcane magic, your classics, one's more clerical, and then there's just something weird and wonderful thrown into the middle. So like the miracles of the temple, the magians, and then Demethan art. That's it. That's it. It's not really even
Yep.
called like magic. It is more like a elemental draw from these symbols that represent the nature of the earth, or the
Mm.
planet that you
Baked
live
into
on.
the setting.
Yeah, it feels more like more raw nature, a raw arcane energy version of like druid magic, like druidic sort of
Yeah.
style, like that ranger. That and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was amazing. Like you've got these glyphs that sort of define what powers, like what sources you have access to, and then it's not like, oh, I'm gonna like take the earth thing and like do my shift earth and move earth like 10 like move around combat so people fall over. Like each combat style and spell has like the amount of targets that you're able to target, your ranging, your like how long things last for, bonuses based on like what skills you have. The damage is always like variable as well, so like how much you dip into the discipline of that skill, which that's another thing that I found excellent, that's another one I want to like hype up. Like how far down the rabbit hole of like honing in your Demethan art skill tree, disciplines, how you perfect that art impacts how you can use each element and spell, how you get interrupted for doing that magic, how long it takes you to cast those spells, and those things are all dynamic based on like what things you have learned by taking that knowledge. So like it really feels like I'm learning how to manipulate the magical forces in this world, rather than I hit a next level, I just boop, I just know how it works now because I'm this level. Like it feels
Mm.
like you make so many decisions in making a character, and if you're choosing to go down the magical path, you have a whole other set of like, it's almost like a mini game of decisions that you're like, what kind of caster do I want to be? How do I want to manipulate the energies that I'm using? Is that faith, which is entirely different again? Is that the raw magics of the world with these symbols? Is it just magians, which is like manufacturing artificial things that store magic to then present it or like explode it out into the world? Like,
Definitely the strongest subsystem in the
oh
whole
yeah,
book, for
oh yeah,
sure. Like really cool. My only criticism really was just like I wish there was better examples for the Demorphin art. You know, it's like,
yes.
hey, could you maybe, because they provided like some tables at the end of like different ways it could be used, but they just did not actually utilize any of the tables that they had made
Yep.
to like govern that decision making. That
Hmm.
was like the only thing, because everything of it was just like, I mean, like it's clear enough that you could probably, I think, figure it out. A bit wordy, of course, like the rest of the book, but yeah, really awesome, baked into the setting
Yeah.
in such an interesting way.
Oh
It
yeah.
and they do feel like pretty distinct, even though like two of them, yeah, like they operate similarly,
Hmm.
but it still feels distinct, you know. And I think that's a real testament to the designer here. Like the magic in this is really cool. It's really
Yeah.
cool.
It's so unique. And like I from a narrative perspective, the way that they
Mm,
mechanically made them similar makes so much sense because they are natural form. Like I mean, drawing power from the gods and the miracles and like drawing from nature directly, it makes sense that they have similarities because they are naturally
mm,
occurring ways that aren't like manipulated by the hand of the culture of man, like to try and harness it in different ways. So it makes total sense. Like these are naturally baked into the world, so there are going to be similarities because it's just the laws of the space that you're living in, like in a physical sense, where the Magians, when they're trying to like harness that and like manufacture that magical power,
mm.
even though they're like it's just really sort of like reassigning how the magic is um like it gets out into the world by creating the crude flux and that. It it's still like the mechanical differences there, like it really shows that like impact of decisions, like active choice to harness and control this magical power. So like being interrupted is different. How risky it is to cast like or perform higher level magical feats is very different to like accessing the ways that nature intended you to manipulate or use this magical force. So the referencing in this book, and you sort of said it just before, like it is difficult, and I agree with it. When I make a character like I do for these games where I'm able to, where we do these readings and like where I review it myself, I try and make a character so that I understand how readable, how well is the information presented to me as a first timer, experienced D&D, experienced tabletop role player for many years. But if I can pick something up and just like flow through nicely, easily, make a character very easily, awesome. That makes that experience really good. And this game does that unless you want to make a magic character,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
every decision before you decide how you're going to start using your magic or what things I should go into to manipulate magic in a certain way, they are like at the very start of like the creating a character. You go through all the creating character, how skills work, the prices of equipment, experience and advancement, resolutions, combat, health, diseases, and then they tell you how the magic system works. Like right at the
Yeah.
tail end, like it's really just like, and if it was literally just shifted up to right after where like either right after skills or before skills, depending on how the system would flow out, it would be so much better. So I think formatting for
Yeah.
me is like a big killer for how this game presents itself because I loved it otherwise. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. I completely agree. Like, and look, this could be a translation thing, right? Like, this was a French role-playing game originally,
Believe so,
so
yeah.
perhaps there's like some of this was just translation. But yeah, like honestly, just the structure of the book, the flow of the information, there's a lot of like exception rules
Mm,
scattered throughout and everything like that. It's quite difficult. And yeah, unfortunately, the magic being like, I think really the strongest subsystem, like the three styles are so distinct, they're really interesting, tied into the world. Like I would want to be a part of that.
yeah.
And I think a lot of players are probably just gonna they'll get through that slog of character creation and be like, oh, I have to read like what, like 6, 8 pages of dense text to learn how one system of magic works.
Mm,
No, that's too
mm,
much,
yeah.
right? And it's a bit of a running theme with this game, like it starts off with like 170 pages of lore, right?
Yep.
It's just not accessible, even if you like that kind of stuff, which
Mm,
is fine and totally good. And sometimes I do, but generally I prefer more the vibes kind of approach. But
mm,
reading all of that and also in the text telling players like, hey, you need to like the systems are very baked into the setting, and not all of them are, to be fair,
mm,
but the system tells you that. So it's like, okay, do I have to actually read all of this to make a rich character that's actually part of this world? Well, the game tells you yes. And I think a lot of players would look at that and go, we're not
mm.
going to do this anymore. This is going to stay on the shelf. We're not playing this game.
Yep.
Give us a summary, give us a summary of the magic system, just enough to make a character
Hmm.
where it's relevant, and shift that all the detail later on. I think that would be fine. But the
Mm.
game just doesn't do that, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think I agree. That's probably the thing that I'd say that's my biggest critique is like it feels like if you haven't read the whole book, you can't come and learn at the table. It's a setting that requires so much knowledge of how, not even to like understand how like the magic system is baked into the narrative, but just how all of the systems interact so that you can feel like you are not having to sit there and explain, oh wait, you can do this magic thing differently to that person. So like everyone will need their like 5 to 10 minutes of explaining how their character works, especially when it comes to the magic systems. Like melee range combat, there's a lot of similarities there that you can be like, cool, everyone, you'll all have to do this, you'll all have to do this, but magic is so separated out that yeah, you if you're not like in and know how it all works for every player, and that puts a lot of like knowledge pressure on the DM as well. Like they have to not
Oh
just
yeah.
know how the system works as a whole, but also then that how distinctly the magic works, how it defines their encounters of people who will use these magic systems against the players as well. It is a very knowledge heavy requirement game.
Still, I think I'd prefer a game that is maybe, it's like, hey, here's the game, here's how it's intended to run, and it works. You don't
Mm,
have to do all and look, some of these more like simulationist traditional games or older style like RPGs that are like big and verbose, and they have so many subsystems looking at you, Shadowrun, are just inaccessible.
Yeah.
Okay. And
Yeah.
you shouldn't be putting out these kinds of products where it's like they don't actually tell you how to play the game, you know?
Mm.
And they're just relying on people to fill in the gaps, because it's just not okay. And it makes this hobby more inaccessible to people, right?
Yeah.
We want it to be easy to pick up a game and to play. And look, there's going to be reading involved. There's no getting around that. You're going to have to learn some rules, you know, and that's where the whole instructional design, instructional text of these come into. The technical writing for RPGs in particular, I think it's challenging,
Mm.
right? But it's part of what our jobs are in making these games, is that we want to make it accessible for people, and we want to make sure that they have everything they need to actually play the game and not have to like house rule things, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't, that's at least when I'm designing a game. I don't want people to feel like they need to house rule things. I want to leave it open for people that like to play that way, because it is kind of part of the hobby, right? But I still want to provide them a complete experience.
There's so many things about this game that are like in that frame where like it's 90% good, 10% like, oh man, please, just a little tweak there would have made this that 100%, that 10 out of 10. And one of those big things for me is the referencing. So
Oh
they,
yeah.
at the very start of the book, sorry, in the game system part of the book, so after your 170 pages of lore, they first thing they tell you is that there is a symbol and a text color differential. So it's a little red symbol, and the text is red for important things that you should
Mm.
pay attention to, and that is used very interestingly through the book. Um, I made a couple of like
It's used
screenshots of
poorly.
times where I was like, I looked at something and I read the red text because I'm like, oh, this is going to be the important thing for me to make my character, and then I can read the black text, which is like the flavor, like that gives me like the how it's presented when I make the character, and that was not always the case. Sometimes I felt like I was getting the so TTRPGs often they have like a character or something that's like happening with you as you create the book. So in this, they're making a character with you. So it informs how the decisions you're making are reflecting in the character, and that's what I got for some of the red text. And then the mechanical side was like just in the black area, which was like meant to be the less important stuff. But that's what I would use to come back to as a reference point. So it doesn't really always use what it's trying to highlight for you to show you the same thing. And I feel like it should be like,
Mm.
cool, this, like that red symbol should be like, these are the mechanics. At the end of the day, when you're like going back through the book, like, oh, how does this system work? That red field, like that symbol that tells me this is important, should be mechanically how that works. If it's just a table in red, if it's just a, oh, if you've got this number or this number, it's a +1. If you've got this number to this number, it's a +2. That should be the stuff that's in the red, because that's what I'm going to come back looking for, and it makes itself so visible by having text color and a symbol that the consistency there was just really underwhelming.
Especially
Mm.
when you've gone out of your way to put all of this throughout the book and tell people, hey, this is how we're going to use this to help you. And then it just falls short occasionally, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's confusing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Even like so making a character for the first time, you are going to flip back and forth to be like, oh, because not everything that you need for making a character fits on one sheet. Like that's just impossible with the depth that these
Mm.
games can have, especially this one.
Yeah. Yes.
So having those to be really easy to go back and forth to is paramount, I think, and it is definitely one of the weak points for this book, that where it didn't use the symbols to say this is the important part. So I've got a thing here, a screenshot I took for organized illusion, which I think is one of like the consequences of a fault going poorly, like one of the test rolls going poorly. And there's a big block of text, probably like 10 to 15 lines of like giving me the vibe, the feels, a little example, and then it's like special ability just baked into the text, not a new line or anything, and then it gives me the mechanical parts of that. What happens when this happens? Like when that I'm trying to resolve this, but it doesn't separate itself out by like bolding or like making it really obvious where the mechanical side of things when I'm going back to reference are, like where that piece is present in the page. It's just one paragraph of text
Yeah.
top to bottom. So
Oh, that's rough.
even yeah, even if I wasn't going to use that symbol and color differential to say this is the important stuff, new line stuff, bold your like special ability, your keywords, something that stands out for someone reading it, so they're not reading through a block of text just trying to find the word they know sort of like denotes, oh, we're going to the mechanical side of things now. and it
It's a good
felt really
idea.
difficult for this sort of game. And they have so many of them because the mechanic system for this game, I think you touched on it. It is light, and I agree with that, but also disagree with it. So when I think of
Well,
yeah, I think it's the dice system is light. It's usually just a D10 and then the modifier that's on the page. That's really light. But the
yeah,
game
simple.
system has a lot of rules. I kind of think of it like I try and represent it like a pool. You've either got a short pool that's very deep, or you've got a very wide pool that's very shallow. And that's what I feel like this game is. There's lots of rule systems. None of them are like baked into something else. Like it's all just like, oh, this is how you resolve this certain scenario. This is how you resolve this scenario. And that's usually very it's usually 2 or 3 lines of reading the text and like, cool, I know how that works at an operational level. And
Yeah, yeah, it's a real shame. And look, it's not even unique to Shadows of Esteren,
no, no, not at
right?
all.
Like when you're writing these books, you need to figure out a way to one, here's the rules, right? In a way that doesn't feel too boring, right? You need to
Mm,
here's the rules, it's clear, right? There's no like ambiguity. But also the text has to excite the reader
hmm.
about playing the game and provide theme all at the same time. And that's it's no easy thing to do. Now, there's one more thing I'd like to talk about. Is there
Okay.
anything else you'd like to chat about?
Not one big thing. There's a couple of little things I'd want to touch on, but let's go through yours first because I've had my second big piece, but a lot of little things to go through. But yeah, hit me.
Okay. Okay.
What else stuck out to you?
Well, the sanity system is, I think, maybe something
Okay.
worth touching on.
Okay.
I'm very look. I'm going to come at this and be honest straight away. I didn't like it. I think it's kind of offensive, but I'm very critical of games that introduce these kinds of systems. I think there's better ways to do it. In fact, like I think the way Mothership um, has like the stress mechanic, and then you
Yep.
sort of like acting out and other things happening there. I think that's fine. That's great. I like that system, in fact, right? But like, I think the problems start with these systems begin to show themselves when it comes to these more simulationist ones, right? Where they're
Mm,
just like, okay, we're going to try to simulate what mental ill health looks like or poor mental health looks like. And I think that's just opening up a lot of space of like, well, look, it's an evolving field that a lot of people don't know about from like a technical perspective, and
mm,
you're essentially devoting so much of your rule book, like if you look at the sanity pages, it's so much more than combat, right? And I'd imagine you're going to be engaging in conflict a lot more than you're going to be engaging in this stuff, right?
mm,
So it's devoting all of this detail to what just surmounts to something that is just factually incorrect and misrepresents what mental health is, right? And look, this I think came out in like 2012 or something, right? Like this original book,
believe
did
so.
it?
Yeah. Actually, I'm not sure if that's like the translated version or like the base release, but it's early in the 2000s,
Yeah,
earlier in the 2000s.
yeah.
Yeah.
So like even more offensive, like it's definitely like a product of its time. But
Mm,
look, I deeply dislike the way it's presented sanity here. I've seen that people tout this game as something that introduces like a really like in-depth sort of sanity system, and yeah, it's in depth, but I think the problem is like it's that the rules say it's using it one for ambience,
mm.
which don't do that, right? Like it's not a topic that is just used for immersion, right? We don't,
No, no.
I think it's kind of offensive, like, oh, you're going to play this game and you're going to be forced to like act out in a way where you're a schizophrenic
Mm,
person is, or whatever it is. Like, it's just deeply wrong to me.
yeah. Yeah.
It has hyper detailed rules for this subsystem that it just sort of like shoves in the back of the book, like it's almost ashamed of it, because I
Mm.
think maybe they are ashamed of it and it shouldn't have been included. And it just tries to like gamify all of these like all of these what they call what they refer to them as disorders.
Yeah.
And look, there's problems with that term, honestly.
Yeah.
Even in the professional space for mental health, I work adjacent to a lot of them. So yeah, those are my main problems with it. And what I'd like to see if games really do want to include something like this in their systems is one, not include them into such detail, and maybe treat them more akin to just like, a physical injury
Mm.
or something like that, right? And they already have a system for injuries and everything in this system, so they could just as easily leverage that. And the benefit of that is that one, they don't have to design a whole other subsystem that people need to learn.
Mm.
Two, they avoid these hyper detailed rules that, could quite quickly become incorrect and misrepresenting what mental health is, and thus, being offensive to people that have lived experiences.
Yeah, for sure.
But then also, it puts the character and the player at the center of this
Mm.
sort of situation. Like this game doesn't put them in the center of actually at the center of recovery for bad mental health or poor mental health, right? To me, it feels kind of like it's actually capturing all of the bad elements of mental health recovery. Like people not believing you or listening to you when you're having these problems, and taking too long and keeping these secrets and obfuscating this information from you. Like it's damaging. It's terrible. Anyway,
Mm.
I could rant on for a long time about this, but what were your thoughts on that system, or did you just disregard it entirely?
And honestly, the test roll system does a better job of it.
Yeah, it does.
And it has
So much better.
it does. Like it's way less crunchy, it's way less rules heavy, it's way less like just it just feels like a bolt on. Let alone
Yeah.
like obviously the incorrectness and like what you raised about like misrepresenting people who have these disorders. And like I won't talk about like the people like when they see stuff like this and then they look at the like similarities to themselves, and there's like a big thing that happened over the last handful of years with like people self-diagnosing themselves with disorders that they don't get professional assessment with or professional help with, and it's misrepresentation of like what how that presents itself. Like there's a bunch of disorders, mental illnesses, diseases, depending on how you want to clarify them or identify them, that are grossly misrepresented in like media and like in the social
Mm.
communal space. Like, so I don't like it for that in as a whole, the same as you. But then it like you said, and I agree, it only looks at the negative. Whereas like I find the test rolls, like if you succeed at a test roll where like you're fighting or like trying to succeed or like go with or against your nature, like that already has so much weight to the character and like how they react to the experiences like that they're currently having and how like previous ones impact it, because you get modifiers in your test rolls based on how well or poorly you do. And that's really hard to define, like whether you're doing well or poorly, because it is like a negative roll, like you're trying to aim low to not, yeah, but that's a whole other
Yeah.
thing. But it's such an elegant little system that again is only like 2 pages, and half of that is really just giving you ideas for how to represent those flaws, those faults. And this just is like, no, this is exactly how this works. This is exactly how this works. And this is going to be the lead weight on your shoulder when you're trying to do something in this area. Like it doesn't give you that freedom of, and flexibility to define how each one of these things impacts the character. It's just so hard and so like to the point of exactly how you work that it takes away that agency.
There's a whole section on diagnosis, right? And it's 3 checks that are done in secret that you're not told about. This is what I was talking about with the obfuscation of information. And all you get from that is how many trauma points your character has. It doesn't do anything about helping you. It doesn't put you at the center of recovery. And like, who, who actually wants to play this? I don't. Who wants to actually role play out? Like this feels like that would be very involved and take up a great amount of time at the table. And it's like for one character, like just from a game perspective, this feels like it's just way too involved. And then it's just, if we just disregard all of the offensiveness of it, I don't think this would be fun.
It's too centric on one person to be like a problem as well. Like I think that's another thing that it would highlight is like if everyone else does really well in the role to like not have those trauma points added, and one player just their dice are just being nasty to them that day, and they get given one, two, and it's just like cascading failures. Like you get perceived, and this is a thing that I didn't even realize. Like if you become that lead weight of like, oh, we have to think about how this person's going to react. Like it gives players subconsciously like a negative affiliation to these disorders in the way that they play the game, let alone how
Yeah.
and it may not happen, it may happen, like translates into like their thinking of like what this thing is like in real life, like in real life, like how they treat people or even interact with the people who come with these disorders may be influenced by this information, which is possibly not correct, probably not correct. Like, yeah, I don't like the real world or like the implications of like seeing these mental health, honestly all negative traits as like something that you have to like avoid or work around rather than like trying to help and facilitate, which is like that's not something I want to encourage. Like your friend's having a hard time, you should help them to the best that you can. Like why is that
Yep.
discouraged? Mm.
Look at the way Mothership handles stress, for instance, right? That represents like some poor mental health, right? And I think it represents it in a way that's actually relevant to the game, that actually
Mm.
brings out the themes of the game in a way that's not really offensive, right? Or look at Blades in the Dark in its harm track. You know, the
Yep.
harm doesn't have to be physical, right? It could just be like maybe you're a bit anxious that day from something that happened or a bit scared of something.
Hmm.
That is like that's not poor mental health necessarily, right? But it is mental health. And it does have an impact without it really disempowering the player, right? You
Mm.
can recover from that. You
Yes.
can overcome that and it's not treated any differently.
I can bet that, and it feels awful to say out loud, but I think that from people who take these games to be more of a tactical and strategy game where they look at the numbers and like min max their way to every victory, when someone gets
Mm,
like, you know, hard enough to deal with when they have enough of these disorders, they're probably just kicking that person out, or at worst killing them, which
yep.
is like
Yeah.
that's just
Terrible.
not the representation I feel like I want when it comes to mental health. Like that is yeah, like what it can
Yeah.
enforce in the table play is just not something I really want to encourage anyone to go to. Like, yeah, not a fan.
No, I hope you
And
said you had some final things, like small things you wanted to chat about.
yeah, let's
Those are
say
pretty much
like
all my main points, really. So
yeah. Let's go for
lay it
like
on me. What else you
the
have?
fast little things that we have because like there was a lot of things I was like I just don't like this. So
Okay.
uh, discouraging rules. So dice rolls when people come up with good logical ideas to resolve a situation. Uh, that I don't like that, and
Okay.
it can be good if like it's a throw and you're like, oh, someone really goes out of their way to like make something exceptional, and not because it's baked into the system, but because the game master is like, that's a really cool idea. I'm gonna like either like give you an advantage for that or give you a bonus for that. But it's not like we don't disregard the rolls because chance is like the thing that's the core of the roleplay experience. Chance of failure, chance of success. Taking that away because someone has made the perfect plan encourages a type of play that isn't for every player as well. Some people love playing by the seat of their pants. They love the chaos gremlin and just like going along and just like seeing how the dice let it play. And do they just take the first option they have and they barrel ahead with it and they just roll with the punches?
It's a very OSR mindset, that one, right?
Yes,
Like old
yes,
school Renaissance stuff,
yep,
classic D&D.
yep.
Like it's all about that player ingenuity and that conversation. And
Mm,
look, I'll be honest, I like playing that way too.
mm.
I like playing both. I don't mind. But yeah, definitely it is picking a lane, and that's going to, some players are just not going to want that. But I guess, like you say, they could just roll, right?
Yeah, that's it. And like it's also
Yeah.
it predefines like character agency as well. Like if you're playing a lower mental stats, high physical combat fighter, and then you're going to like your wall maps and like doing logistics of like measuring out things, like it just feels like such a flow break. So you're either always having to play
Mm.
like a high level tactician, or only one player is going to fulfill that role of like getting out of doing roles, which sort of like everyone else just sort of takes a backseat, or everyone becomes a master tactician and like the stats on the sheet really don't mean anything because the player is doing all of that stuff rather than the characters. And like
Yeah, and look, that made a lot more sense when you look at like, the early versions of Dungeons and Dragons, right?
for sure, yeah.
Like there were like some exception rules here and there, but like it was very simple, very pared back, and it was really, I think, emphasizing that resource management and that conversation that's happening, right?
Yeah.
Where you're trying to set up those situations where you don't have to roll because rolling is dangerous, right? And it works in that. One small thing I had, just really quickly,
Hmm.
um, really felt like the whole damage calculation probably could have been streamlined a bit.
Yeah.
Like it's like, okay, I make my roll, I add my numbers. Oh, I need this number from you. I subtract that from this roll. Oh, I need this other number from you. I subtract it from my roll. Okay, this is the damage now. It's like 3 steps
Yeah.
where you're also getting information from the target as well.
Hmm.
It's like, oh, you really could have simplified that by even just reducing it to just one number. Get rid of protection. Armor gives you a bonus to defense.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah.
Same outcome.
I think that's one of those big symptoms from trying to figure out how to present the mechanics. Like you can sell that people think that they need a different, and I call them keywords because that's sort of like the thing, like deflection, armor. They are like your keywords, and then they have mechanics that are wrapped around when that appears in text. I think that they
Mm,
have too many keywords that don't need to be there. Like when I first read the thing about test rolls, I was like, why do we need another name for literally just, hey, I'm testing your resolve in this thing? But as I read how it presents itself and how it wants to differentiate itself from the ways in the faults, I
mm,
instantly was like, nah, okay, no, that's it's so well done because they haven't just added the keyword for having another thing on the character sheet. It's defined, broadly defined, so that you can bring your own like element to it without thinking, oh, how do I flip that when I'm choosing my ways? Like you define your character in the positive ways in which you like to do that, and then you have time to create them and mold them into like that thing that you love and like the perfectionism. And then you look at the faults. Like, great, what's the consequence of being all of these good things? And the
mm.
way they put faults in for magic, which please put magic higher in the system. Oh my god,
Yeah,
please.
yeah.
Like that should be your pet. Like that's the end of the journey. Like, great, you've built yourself up, but this game is not perfect. There are things that make this world hard to live in. How do those interact with you after you've seen how much you can build yourself up? What are those things that are
Mm.
always going to be there that sit in the back of your mind, being like, "Oh man, this is going to test me today," and that's
That's a good call.
beautiful. But
Yeah, that's very poetic.
yeah, like that's
Ending
what
on
I
that, I love that.
yeah, like that's and like it's the thing of like that imperfect. They're not even heroes in this game. Like they don't feel like they've got like they're gonna charge through like swaths of enemies and stuff. Like every combat is like it feels real. It has consequence. Like health gets lower, rolls get lower. Like you're feeling the impact on the body. Like it does that and presents that really well. So I wish that there was more of that mechanic representation of the setting baked into the way you play the game. And XP. That's the last thing that I want to like be like, this was cool. It was a cool idea. In one way, but not in others.
Can't even remember the XP. Jeez. Okay,
So
what was it?
so it's a system where they like you have three elements of giving XP. It's a scale of one to
Oh,
five, and the
yes.
three
Yep.
elements that you're to what I don't like about it is it comes down to GM discretion, which is
Yeah.
that can be rough, depending on the person sitting behind the table, behind the screen.
Well, hopefully you're playing with friends. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but even then, like the thing, it's very loosely defined. So confrontation, how well did you deal with confrontation? It is good in that it's like cool. Confrontation is not always fight. They have fight, negotiations, mysteries, and techniques. So many elements in the pillars of what you do when it doesn't always end up in fisticuffs, like going through rooms, figuring out clues, making connections with stuff. That's great. Love that. How I guess like how well the party rolls with those punches is sort of how I would distribute XP. But then they have progression of the plot. Big no no. I do not
Yeah.
like that as a way to reward players.
Oh, yeah.
It turns from a hey, I have this weird plot hook that I have discovered and I as a character would like to go and investigate, like something that's off the beaten path that may help us. It may not help us. It does mean that the GM or game leader for this game may have to make some improv things on the fly. Unfortunately, that's what happens when you become a GM. You kind of sign up to being an improv presenter because that's just how the game's
It's the
designed and
nature of the
built.
game.
That's it,
Yeah.
entirely it. So I don't like progression of the plot as an XP pool to be rewarding players with. And then interpretation of the PC. Just so players making efforts to convincingly play their PC.
You
And
know
that
what that
just,
was referring to?
yeah,
It
yeah,
uses that keyword atmosphere, which
yeah.
is they use in the sanity system. Yeah.
Mm, mm, mm. Yeah,
Terrible.
I did not like it. I don't like it because your perception of how your character changes or may change in the game is not always going to be the same as the game master that you have there. So you thinking that you've done really well at like showing growth and change and development, if you're not sticking to what's on the page and that's how your game master is scoring your interpretation of the PC, then you're going to get not rewarded for growth and like moving away from like the staple, like the starting point that you had. So I'm not a fan of that either. But
Yeah. I think, oh, yeah.
the fact there's a scale as well and makes it not like, oh, what can we do to like get more XP if people are doing like, killing creatures gives X XP. Like it's a session based thing, so you're not sort of like having to one worry about like, oh, have we progressed far enough to make another level? Like it's very quantifiable in some way, but the way in which they choose to, like the metrics in which they choose to present it, I just was not a fan of 2 out of 3 of them. So yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a system that presents a adversarial GM, right?
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
And look,
Yeah.
that's some games work really well with that. You know, it really depends on it. Some tables are built around that adversarial sort of GM, but yeah, this is definitely one of those systems that presents it as like that's just the way game masters are. And I don't know if really that suits this system actually. It's probably
Yeah.
just like a bit of its roots, you know, that just it's a hangover from earlier designs.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
Hmm.
Um, and sorry, there is one more little tiny thing. It
Oh
was
yeah,
that lack of
yeah. What is
identity.
it?
Um,
Oh, the lack of identity. What do you mean by that?
the amount of things that the rules say, so the game system, it says to the GM that you don't have to really do this if you don't want to, and really
Yeah,
that's hard. Like, how do you keep the core of your game when you're just like freely, just willy nilly? We're just gonna get rid of the system, and it's not like, oh wait, like carry weight or something like that. It's not, oh, can like how much can you actually push and pull, like it's not the little bits of like sub areas or like bits underneath core systems. It is like core systems to the game that are just like, yeah, you can just get rid of that, that's fine, you don't need to worry about that if you don't want to. Like it just, it doesn't sit well with me that they're not, it's not even like a confidence piece, it's just like, are you not, actually maybe it is, you're not confident that your system is like robust enough to be accessible and workable for the majority of people as like at like the core level as well. Like that's the bit that gets me. It's like these are
yeah,
core systems like that you just either don't care enough to be like make sure that they work and they can work for the majority of tables, and people will still home rule out stuff, and that's fine. Like you have to accept that. But the fact that you're willing to acknowledge that this system may not work for every table and that you just kept it and didn't try and make it like work a little better for a wider audience, is, yeah, I think it's a real negative to the book as a whole. Um,
yeah.
yeah,
Definitely lazy design. I think sometimes it's valid with some like optional rules, but you're right.
sure.
Like this did it with like core like aspects of this system.
Hmm.
You know, like it really touted the sanity system, for instance, right?
Yeah.
Even in book zero, like the little quick start, and
Yep.
then the sanity system's just shoved at the very end of the book. It's like, oh yeah, yeah, only use this if you're mature. It's like, hey,
Yeah.
the person who wrote this isn't mature, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
like it's a shame. I agree. It's not. It doesn't feel like it's confident in its own systems.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Okay. So all in
good call.
all in
All in
all,
all,
how do you feel about it? Do you think you would bring this game, Shadow of Esteren, to the table for any of the groups that you would think you'd run?
look, no, honestly, I won't. I think the design's like fairly dated. It has some really cool ideas that I
Hmm.
think I'd probably want to explore a little bit more, like the
Yep.
fighting styles,
Yeah.
possibly combined with like a zone-based combat, so to help you know organize some of that like complexity if it arises.
For sure. Yeah.
I think is a really neat idea. As I mentioned, the test rolls or like you know gently mechanizing like values, ideals, beliefs of characters is
Yep.
something I've always been interested in. I
Yep.
think this
Yep.
system does a really great job at that. Possibly could do a little bit better, but I think it was probably ahead of its time, honestly,
Yeah. I
when it came
agree.
to that. But yeah, overall, I think it's has some neat things. Ultimately, falls flat, borderline offensive in some areas.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I could see some people having a really good time with it, you know, particularly if you really like to be invested in like a multi-year campaign. I think this system and this setting would provide a lot of great gameplay for you, just stripping away the sanity system, uh, at least, you know, and I
Hmm.
think you could probably have a good time. For my
Yeah.
groups and for me, nah, not really our jam. We have many other systems I think we'd rather play over something like this. You know, if I wanted to explore like character development between like evil and good and stuff, I might look at like Good Strong Hands.
Yeah.
Or
Yep.
if I wanted to play something that's like a little bit more like darker, sort of like have those like dark tones in the setting, I might look at Shadow of the Demon Lord, for instance. Or if I wanted something that was perhaps like a little bit more like the low magic but kind of lethal, I might look at Warhammer Fantasy.
Yep.
Yeah. What about you?
Classic system.
Yeah.
I think I think there's one group that I have played with, and I don't think I've run for before, that I would see this working really well in. But that group is a group that would also be really interested in like a very heavy, crunchy sci-fi game, which I'm bringing to them with Striker by
Oh, yeah.
ZFG Games, Zenith Foundry Games. Phenomenal book. It falls into the same thing of like being a very graphic-less book, but the amount of mechanics that go into that, it's an extremely crunchy game. And as a sci-fi fan, I love that for it. It scratches an itch that's really, really
Yeah.
deeply rooted in those things. But I can't see it being brought to the table for any other group that I usually play with or run for. I just can't. It's too dependent on having so much knowledge of a system that I don't like doing that. Like when I teach people to play role playing games, no matter what game it is, I like to bring it into and I think you talk about this as like teaching methodology. So I'm like, cool, what are the mechanics that people want to know or need to know in order to play this game successfully? And then I take those elements. I'm like, cool, how can I wrap story around those things to force someone to the through the spaces that they need to learn the game. And learning is the best part. Like learning through play, I think, is the best way to teach these things. If you don't want to have to force people to read rule books, bring them a character sheet. We'll learn on the fly. You'll have some fun. You'll make some mistakes, and that's role playing for you.
Yeah, and look, that's what I normally do with my games. You know, when I'm running campaigns, I'm just like, you guys show up, make your characters. I'll introduce rules as they become relevant. You know,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, that's my preferred way to teach a game as well.
yeah. Shadow of
Good game.
Esteren, solid game. Some great stuff in there, but I just don't think it's honestly for me. I did really enjoy the narrative piece though. So if you're looking for some really cool like narrative inspiration, go read the lore. Like it was really well presented and well done. It's like a mix between like a presentation of a world and also like how the people live in it. Absolutely fantastic. Maybe this person should just become an author. Like honestly, I think if they pick one style or another for a book, or they want to make like a Silmarillion style book for any world where they talk about the characters, how they work, and also the world itself, like do that because you did such an excellent job at that. So that would be my recommendation for the designer if they haven't gone on to make other RPGs, or maybe just take on those refinements like we talked about. Because yeah, there's just refinement more than anything.
Actually, I think the designer of this is currently working on the design for the Nemesis role playing game.
No way!
I
Wow,
think so. I think it's the same person. Yeah,
that could be an
be interesting.
interesting one to read to like as a comparison point to see what 10 to 15 years have done to their perspective of how to handle some of these systems. Because I don't doubt that Nemesis would have quite a few of them, obviously differently represented, but quite a few of
Yeah,
these can translate across to that more
I'm
sci-fi
interested.
futuristic setting. Yeah, the bookworms, which you should all join, by the way. We'll leave that link to the Discord down here, but you join in, come and join, have the chat. Even if you're just here to watch these videos or check out what other people are talking about these games before you read them yourselves, like it's a great resource, great way to figure out what's good about these games and things you might want to take for your own creative. So we will chuck a thing down in the show notes like we usually do. But I have been Dylan, co-founder of Indiverse.io, independent marketplace for tabletop games. My lovely co-host is Nicholas on the side here, designer, creator, works with the publisher of Ravensridge, where they make amazing accessories for roleplay
Also
games.
one of the directors.
Yeah, in fact, even better, even higher up the pecking order there.
That's right. Yeah,
Is an important dude. Creative, caught
I
the
am very
rain,
important.
great role playing experience and knowledge and perspective as well. Always wows me when it comes to the table. So yeah, thank you again, Nick. It has been an absolute pleasure, and we will see you next time. Bye, everyone.